So far in this class, we've talked about aspects of drawing and observation. We looked into the elements and principles of design, such as line, shape, contrast, and value. And we use those in ways to, achieve the artworks that we've been making in the class. Uh, um, in different sort of processes and techniques and so forth. And then we moved on to um, practice two, which focuses on 2D and 3D materiality. So far, we've dealt with more of a 2D aspect, focusing on color with the discipline of painting. Um, so in this, we've focused on the element of color and different ways to create types of color harmony, within visual art. Uh, this is through uh, this is kind of brought about through the use of the color wheel and the way it works in terms of creating color harmony through the color schemes, such as analogous color schemes, which are three colors adjacent to one another on the color wheel. Um, what else? Split complementary, which are two colors opposite of one another on the color wheel. Um, Triad, which are three colors at equal distance from one another, and split complementary as well. Um, and so you've practiced some color mixing through this and so forth. And just through the practice of mixing colors, you went on to work on assignment 2.2, which is creating an abstract landscape. So you pretty much have simplified a representational landscape from images that you've pulled from the internet to create a very simple, just made up of shapes and color, sort of abstract work of art. So today, what I'm going to cover is three-dimensional art. Um, in this, at the end of this, I'm going to explain what we're going to do with our paintings of our abstract landscape and how we're going to abstract those even further through the use of through the aspects of three-dimensional artwork. So I'm going to share my screen real quick to get to my slides. So let me move my menu bar. Oops. Show names of entity. There we go. So three-dimensional art. What we're going to look into are the elements form, volume, mass, and texture when kind of explaining the different facets of three-dimensional works of art. Here is just an example of a exhibition by artist Jeff Koons. This is one of his almost most recent pieces. Like this came out back in 2014. I'll get into this a little bit more, but it's called Plato. It's a gigantic sculpture made to look and represent the idea of Plato. But anyway, let's keep moving here. So when we're talking about three-dimensional art, so when we talked about two-dimensional art, we talked about two dimensions having, height and width. Now we're going into a different dimension now in term to kind of give us an idea of, the artwork as a three-dimensional piece. So we're adding depth to this. Pyramids are an example of this. Pyramids have height, weight, and width and depth. Um, um, and three-dimensional art uses visual elements such as form, volume, mass, and texture in order to kind of like describe all aspects of the work. Uh, so what we're going to do is review each of these as we move through these slides. So form So two-dimensional objects like a triangle or a circle or anything two-dimensional are usually referred to as a shape, all right? Shapes are flat and then they do not have mass or volume. So when we talk about and describe three-dimensional objects, we instead of saying shapes, we usually say form. Form occupies our physical space and exists in a real and solid way. Um, when an artist creates form, they consider the space the form occupies. So, for instance, like the gallery or wherever the artist decides to install, this doesn't have to be just a gallery. It could be a do-it-yourself DIY space. It could be a space out in the public and so forth. And they also consider how the viewer is going to experience it. Since it's not something that's sitting on the wall anymore, we're not just standing in front of it. How are the viewers going to interact with it? In terms of it being in our physical space, it being an obstacle to get around, to look at. All these kind of ideas start to come into play when it comes to trying to figure out uh, a sculpture or a three-dimensional work of art. Forms have two fundamental attributes, which are volume and mass. When we speak of volume, we talk about the amount of space the form occupies. Uh, Mass is the expression that a volume is solid and occupies space. So enhance like the idea of form, we look towards usually look towards the surface. I'm sorry, let me back up a bit. So volume uh, talks about volume is like, how we fill up the space, and how much we fill up that space. Sometimes artists will fill up a space to where, it's really difficult to kind of navigate and like move through, whatever space gallery the work of art is in. A lot of times this doesn't just like revolve into like one simple sculpture. These can be full on like installations that become very immersive. Mass is when the volume is solid. So this really kind of determines the weight of the work of art. Sometimes work of art, the mass of a work of art can even trick us too. Sometimes we can see a sculpture and think like it's made of some type of hairy material, but maybe the artist have tricked the viewer's perception into thinking this, where the sculpture is probably made of like foam and so forth. So mass can be played with in different ways to kind of kind of trick the viewer's perception of how they perceive a work of art. um and ways to like enhance the idea of form, we look towards the surface. A lot of times the surface of forms can grab our attention so much that we want to touch it. I'm sure many of you have went to a museum and felt very inclined to like try to grab something or want to touch a work of art, and this sensation arises from the texture that we see on forms. Texture can be used to evoke our memories of other three-dimensional objects in the world and allow us to experience our own world in a richer way. We all have like different perceptions on how we view textures, so we all might have a different way of in terms of our memories, how we perceive some textures, maybe regarding like going back to like our childhood um, or whatever. This is a piece on screen by a Swiss surrealist, Marie Oppenheim, and she used textures to contradict the conscious logical experience of the viewer. So here we see her sculpture object, and you can see the cup saucer and the spoon, which are normally hard and cool to the touch, but instead what she does, she makes them soft and furry. Kind of gross, right? So you can imagine like sipping this object and it tickling your lips maybe. The artist is counting on like tactile memory to conflict with the actual experience of sipping tea from a shiny teacup. In this case, the form is recognizable, but uh, the associated experience with it is not. Like shape, we define form by organic and geometric. So we are aware organic shapes are even, and even forms can be seen in most things in the natural world. Um, artists artists insinuate the irregular character of organic forms for like expressive effect. Geometric forms are regular and are readily expressible in words and mathematics, so such as like cubes, cylinders, cones, pyramids are basic examples. Um, Again, we are organic forms, us as human beings. So kind of think about that as well. Uh, I have two examples here on screen. You have let me move. I don't know if this recording's like recording my face as well, so I'm gonna just move that out the way so you can see what's on screen here. This is on the top left is Anish Kapoor of his piece Cloudgate, 2004. This is a piece in Millennium Park in Chicago. Um, if any of you have been here, you probably stepping up to this, you kind of get this kind of emotion, seeing this like very reflective, shiny, gigantic work of art, reflecting the city of Chicago, and on the opposite side, reflecting the park itself, and even ourselves as we see ourselves through the reflection of the stainless steel. This piece is definitely a piece that is interactive. It's a public work of art. So the artists kind of figure, people will have these sort of visceral connections to this, of wanting to touch, its smooth surface and walk under it and walk around it to really experience, this this piece. This also has a nickname as well. It's the original name is Cloudgate, but many of you, if you are familiar with this work, might know it as the Bean. David Smith here at the bottom right um, is mostly a kinetic artist. Um, this piece can actually move around as wind hits it. It's usually set up outside, but you can see he's using simple geometric forms to kind of stack one on top of the other to make this uh, heavy, sort of unstable looking piece, where it looks like any of these forms could fall off easily just by the way they are assembled on this sculpture. Artists who work in three dimensions may also choose like the work for a work of art to be in a relief or in the round. So a relief is a work in which forms project from a flat surface, designed only to be viewed from one side, just kind of like a painting in a sense. Forms in relief combine aspects of two and three dimensional works of art. Reliefs can be mounted on the wall or other surfaces. Um, and a form in the round can be viewed from all sides. So remember that, when we're kind of making works in this class. Here's a couple examples of a relief sculpture. We have here the Imperial Procession from Arapastus Augusta from 13 BCE. And you can see that this relief sculpture involves the human figure. Um, you could see that the artist is really trying to display this idea of depth and space due to the depth in which the figures in the foreground tend to come out way more than those in the background. As we move to the back portion, of this relief sculpture, we see the figures become fairly flat in comparison to their to the components, within the foreground. As you can see here, in comparison to this. Uh, Also, what helps with this and what the artists usually kind of keep in mind are the way light and shadow work with the piece as well. Shadows become much deeper with these figures in the foreground. And to really give us a sense of space and or this illusion of space, with these flatter figures in the background, the shadows don't really hit those as much. So they're a little bit more distorted and less in detail. Here's a simple kind of relief sculpture made by some of my students back a couple of semesters ago for a project you'll be doing, a similar project you'll be doing, but you'll also be doing a little bit different as well. But they created this landscape into a relief sculpture by stacking cardboard one on top of the other to create layers. And so you can see here also shadow comes into play as light kind of hits the surface to really emphasize the shapes or forms that are included on this piece. Relief can also be of a different manner as well. In contemporary art, artists still use relief sculpture, but also combine aspects of, uh, that we would traditionally see in two-dimensional works of art, such as painting. So we have here Thornton Dial and Linda Pace. Thornton Dial on the left side is creating a piece with a work of art or a painting, pretty much just adhering like different types of objects to the surface to really build up that surface. And then once he has a nice surface build up, he begins to paint in a really harmonious way. You can see here that he is he's using an analogous color scheme, red, orange, and yellow, to kind of create this. Orange being like the most dominant color with it, or yellow being the most dominant color within this. But and in doing this, he creates a very visually appealing, harmonious like work of art. Even, first as a viewer, we probably will notice like the color and the expressiveness and way objects kind of direct our eyes through the piece. But as we kind of move and look with closer observation, we start to notice the things that are involved with this piece as well, such as this uh, doll here, just sitting at the top left corner of the artwork, and so things become a bit disturbing at times. Linda Pace is a little bit more cheery. It's a monochromatic, mostly using red or orange colors, and their tints and shades, or depending on you know the color of the object that's being used. So they're all of similar colors. Um, Linda Pace is using just everyday objects to create this gigantic piece, assembling it, you know, uh, into what we see here. It's a piece that probably involves ideas of consumerism or overconsumption of just like things. Uh, really gorgeous if you ever get to see it. Linda Pace is actually a pretty well-known artist of the San Antonio area. She's long passed now since like 2005, or since 2009, I believe. But there is a foundation under her name that holds a collection of her. She was also a art collector, and you can see her collection at a new institution called Ruby City in San Antonio. Really fantastic place. So if you ever get a chance, check out Ruby City. Whenever you're in the city of San Antonio. So again, um, these are examples of works of art as relief sculpture. Okay. Then we get into in the round. In the round is, as it sounds, pretty much sculpture that sits in the middle of our physical space that we can actually walk around and observe the sculpture from like all sides, right? It gives us an opportunity to look, at it from above, from below, if we wanted to really kind of pull in the details that the artist has achieved. Many of you are probably way more familiar with sculptures such as this, rather than relief sculpture. But if you really pay attention, you can see the two pretty commonly in different art museums around the world. Another example, and going back to this one that we had on the first slide, is Jeff Koons' Play-Doh sculpture. I have a video here I'd like you to watch because I like the way Jeff Koons explains this piece using terms such as the elements and principles of design to really give us a feel, into what this piece is about and how it is supposed to be experienced. So let me hit this link real quick. Let me also make sure that my sound is on. I'll stop share real quick and share again. Just want to make sure sound is on and share. Exit that.
Everything's a metaphor. At the end of the day, we don't care about objects, we care about people. And all objects and images are metaphor for self and for other people. I'm Jeff Koons. I'm an artist. I live in New York City. We interact with the external world through sense perception. And through that, you feel emotions, and emotions become ideas. So I started Play-Doh in 1994. In my own mind, I thought that Play-Doh should be a polyethylene sculpture. But to make a polyethylene piece, you cannot get the undercuts. And as I was developing the model and removing all the undercuts, I realized I was sacrificing too much for the piece. I wanted to hold on to a super realism. So eventually I changed and I decided I'm going to make it in aluminum. I would look at different areas. Okay, this part is looking really great. This could maybe be just a little too sharp. And then I'd come back the next month. Oh, okay, maybe just a little too organic, went a little too far. And so it was just a process of this year in, year out to be able to get the piece where it was really believable as a mound of Play-Doh. There are 27 separate organic forms that are all stacked on top of each other. So if this comes up on a dome shape there, that's perfectly touching on the top. So it's not for perfectionism. It's to be able to communicate and to be able to let somebody stay within the abstraction as long as possible. But that care and attention, it's not to an object, it's to the viewer. And it's showing how much you care about the viewer. It took a while to be able to get the surface and to continue to work and articulate the plaster to get these different tensions. If we look at the white, you can feel that it was smashed down there. You can feel like a thumb would have just pulled right across there. I put in very, very micro glass beads into the Play-Doh so that the light would reflect it. A sheen, whenever you paint anything, is always important in realism. Play-Doh is multi-dimensional. It's not just kind of a one-dimensional look at things. It has a lot of different points of view. It's dealing with that kind of in a psychological way, but also in a way of form and of surface, texture, color, and a meaning. So you have this whole organic process, and it captures a feeling of creation. It has this aspect of a creative process documenting the forces in action. And there's something very, very human in the mound. So within my works, it's an image that I'm very proud of.
I always like that video. A lot of people have a problem with Jeff Koons, and so many reasons why. We won't get into it, but I do truly enjoy his work. So I'm going to stop this video here. I'm going to have a second video that explains the assignment, and we'll go into another aspect to kind of give you a sense of different types of visual arts in order to understand why we're going through these processes with assignment 2.2 and moving it into assignment 2.3. So check out video 2.